The story starts with a girl, Han Da Woon, who is getting ready for the first day of her university. She was looking absolutely stunning because her twin sister, Han Suji, had prepped her up. Da Won is super smart, which is why she got into Korea's top university. But her sister Suji? Well, let's just say studying isn't exactly her thing. She is more into makeup, singing, and dancing, and to top it off, she is a total pro at all of it. Then their mom enters the room and starts yelling at Suji because, well, Suji isn't exactly hitting the books, but she talks to Da Won really sweetly. When Da Won finally reaches the university, she is carefully walking in her heels for the first time, trying not to trip over. Just then, a guy named Hye Sung drives towards her in his car. Da Won freezes in front of the car, totally freaked out. But before she could get run over, another guy, Go Yi-ra, swoops in and saves her, but her coffee spills all over his jacket in the process. Go Yi-ra angrily yells at the guy in the car and then asks Da Won if she is okay. Da Won, embarrassed, starts apologizing profusely because she ruined his shirt. But Go Yi-ra plays it cool by saying no worries and walks off. Da Won was definitely impressed by this guy on the very first day, but in all the excitement, she forgets to ask for his name. Later, Go Yi-ra introduces himself at the volleyball court and tells all the juniors, "My name is Go Yi-ra, and if anyone dares to call me Gorilla, they are dead meat." Just then, their coach arrives and teasingly calls him Gorilla, making Go Yi-ra so mad that he hurls a volleyball at the coach, who dramatically falls to the ground. Go Yi-ra, still fuming, says he won't spare anyone, while the other students rush to help the poor coach and take him to the hospital. Meanwhile, Hye Sung heads to the administrative office to fill out his subject form. Coming from a filthy rich family, he completes the university requirements, and Da Won was also there to fill her form. An invigilator is observing everyone's activity, and when she spots Da Won, she happily yells out her name. Da Won greets her politely, though she is a little confused. The teacher then explains that she used to work as an assistant at Da Won's high school and is thrilled that such a top student has joined their university. Everyone starts staring at Da Won, including Hye Sung. The teacher proudly adds that Da Won topped her class in business studies and that they expect her to continue excelling here. Afterward, Da Won finishes her tasks and accidentally drops her timetable near Hye Sung, who picks it up, reads it, and smiles. Outside, Da Won spots two guys wearing the same uniform as the one who saved her earlier. She follows them all the way to the volleyball court, where she spots a man standing and mistakes him for a professor. The man gets mad, and another student, One, steps in by saying, "He's not a professor, he's just a first-year student like you." Da Won is shocked, but before she can say anything, Go Yi-ra yells at them, "What are you two doing here? Get back here!" Da Won asks the guys the name of their captain, and they tell her, "Our captain's name is Go Yi-ra." Da Won, baffled, says, "Wait, what? Who names their kid Gorilla?" The guys clarify, "Not Gorilla, Go Yi-ra." But it's too late, and Go Yi-ra hears the word gorilla again and screams, "Who dared to call me gorilla again?" The two guys quickly hide Da Won and change the topic. Meanwhile, Hye Sung arrives at the college in his car, instantly attracting a group of clingy students. Being the only heir of the Taemin group and a famous volleyball player, everyone's begging him for his autograph. Hye Sung tries to brush it off, saying, "We are all just students here. No need for this?" But one girl straight up asks him for a kiss, and another even pushes her, demanding the same. Within minutes, a whole crowd of girls surrounds him, which makes Hye Sung happy, and he is used to getting attention, but at the same time, it's kind of exhausting. Eventually, he makes his way to his coach, who is far from impressed. Because Hye Sung has decided to quit volleyball to focus on his studies. The coach is not buying it, but Hye Sung excuses himself, saying he needs to graduate with good grades. His friend also questions this decision, but Hye Sung confidently says, "First, I will ace my studies, you'll see." And how does he plan to do that? By borrowing notes from the smartest girl in class, who is more than happy to share everything with him. On the other hand, Go Yi-ra is awkwardly standing outside his coach's house, the same coach he whacked with a volleyball earlier. He is too scared to go inside. Just then, the coach's daughter, Sun Soo-bin, storms out and starts beating him up, yelling, "How dare you kick my dad?" As Go Yi-ra gets pummeled, and the coach comes out and tells his daughter to stop, saying, "Go Yi-ra is like a brother to you, don't treat him like this." Soo-bin retorts, "This guy is not my brother." Meanwhile, Go Yi-ra starts dramatically acting, "Of course I am your brother, and coach, you're like a father to me." He even starts fake crying, but the coach lets him inside, telling him that their team hasn't won a single match yet, and maybe he is the reason. Go Yi-ra doesn't get the sarcasm and agrees, yeah, it's probably its coach's fault. Just then, Soo-bin shows him her phone, revealing that star volleyball player Hye Sung has joined their university. Hearing this, Go Yi-ra thinks that if they can get Hye Sung on their team, they will never lose again. Both Go Yi-ra and the coach start celebrating this idea like they have just won the championship already. Meanwhile, on his way home, Hye Sung compares his timetable with Da Won's and realizes they match perfectly. He mutters to himself, "Looks like I will be seeing a lot of Da Won." After her first day, Da Won excitedly tells Suji that she met her crush. When Suji asks for his name, Da Won says, "Go Yi-ra," and Suji laughs, calling him Gorilla too. But Da Won is too lost in her own thoughts, already dreaming of dating Go Yi-ra at university. The next day, Da Won goes to Go Yi-ra with a bottle of milk to thank him. But before she can even open her mouth, Go Yi-ra sprints towards Hye Sung, who was already surrounded by a group of girls. Apparently, he had been waiting for him for a while. Da Won feels terrible, especially since Go Yi-ra knocked the milk out of her hands in his haste. Feeling ignored, she leaves. Go Yi-ra then asks Hye Sung to join his volleyball team. In typical dramatic fashion, Hye Sung, with all the attitude in the world, replies, "Who even are you, bro?" Go Yi-ra introduces himself, explaining that since Hye Sung is a star player and captain, he wants him on his team. Upon hearing Go Yi-ra's name, Hye Sung teasingly calls him Gorilla, but Go Yi-ra, trying hard to keep his cool, asks him again to join the team. However, Hye Sung starts to walk away, ignoring him. Go Yi-ra, not one to give up easily, places his hand on Hye Sung's shoulder and says, "Do you even know what could happen if you walk away while a senior is talking to you?" He requests one more time, and Hye Sung sarcastically replies that if he wanted to play volleyball, he wouldn't have quit the national team. He is only here to study. And with that, Hye Sung walks away, with all the girls fluttering behind him like moths to a flame. Go Yi-ra is left dumbfounded that Hye Sung just flat out rejected him. Hye Sung heads straight to his classroom, ignoring the girls, and sits next to Da Won according to his plan. But Da Won doesn't even notice because she is still upset over the incident with her crush earlier in the day. Trying to make conversation, Hye Sung introduces himself, and in return, Da Won uninterestedly tells him her name. Hye Sung is shocked that there is actually a girl in this college who doesn't know who he is. He asks her again, but she casually asks if he is close to Go Yi-ra. "You mean that gorilla?" Hye Sung responds. Da Won then points outside, where Go Yi-ra is making ridiculous faces, desperately trying to get Hye Sung's attention. But Hye Sung just ignores him. As they leave the classroom, Go Yi-ra is already waiting outside and immediately starts begging Hye Sung to join the volleyball team again. Seeing this, Da Won, thinking it's cute, suggests that Hye Sung should just join. Surprisingly, Hye Sung agrees to at least visit the sports court. When they get there, all the students are stunned to see the national star Hye Sung in the flesh. Go Yi-ra is trying to hide his embarrassment and tells the team to continue their practice. But unsurprisingly, the team plays terribly. Frustrated, Hye Sung tells Go Yi-ra that no single player can save this disaster of a team and suggests Da Won leave with him. But Da Won, lost in her admiration for her senior Go Yi-ra, tells him she's going to stay. Hye Sung reminds her they have class, but she insists she doesn't have any more classes. Regardless, Hye Sung drags her out, and once Da Won sees her face in the reflection, she starts banging her head on the desk, regretting how ridiculous she must have looked in front of her senior. Seeing her overreaction, Hye Sung figures out that Da Won has a crush on Go Yi-ra. He asks her directly, and she nods, confessing that Go Yi-ra is super cool and even saved her from getting hit by a car on the first day. Hye Sung, amused, offers her a deal that he will help her win over Go Yi-ra, since as a guy he knows exactly how other guys think. In exchange, Da Won has to help him with his studies. Da Won happily agrees. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, Hye Sung's fangirls are busy singing his praises and bad-mouthing Da Won for sitting next to their beloved Appa. When Da Won exits the washroom, she goes to the park and starts Googling Hye Sung, trying to understand why all the girls are so crazy about him. She is shocked to learn that he is a national volleyball player and has even represented his country. Later, she tells Hye Sung what she found online, and he casually responds, "Well, that was quick." Embarrassed, Da Won apologizes and asks him why he quit playing volleyball if he was so good. Hye Sung explains that all his relatives play volleyball, so it just became easy for him, but he doesn't actually enjoy it anymore. Now he wants to pursue something he is passionate about. Da Won tells him that's cool, but Hye Sung, with a grin, asks if she meant cool or fool, because ever since he quit, people have been calling him an idiot. Da Woon reassures him that what he is doing is really cool because he is making decisions for himself without worrying about others. Hye Sung appreciates her words. After the embarrassment of watching his team fail, Go Yi-ra heads to the gym with his team to train. One guy asks why Hye Sung won't consider joining them, and Go Yi-ra, still angry, says, "With how you guys played today, even I would have quit the team." Another student comments that they need to get Hye Sung on the team at any cost. Determined, the group starts spying on Hye Sung outside his classroom. Go Yi-ra tells them that if they keep this up, people will start thinking they are Hye Sung's fanboys. One guy jokes that maybe Go Yi-ra is interested in girls, which earns him a smack from Go Yi-ra. Seeing Da Woon constantly hanging out with Hye Sung, Go Yi-ra's crew decides to keep an eye on her too. But their plan falls apart when Jin-ha and Won get caught by the teacher, and she asks Jin-ha if he is even a student here. Jin-ha, frustrated, complains that he's only 19, but everyone treats him like an adult. Meanwhile, Won tells him that it's okay, but Jin-ha angrily retorts that they haven't even reported back to their boss yet. When they do, Go Yi-ra decides to take matters into his own hands and waits outside the girls' washroom for Da Woon. When Da Woon exits, Go Yi-ra calls her by name, which surprises her. How does he even know her name? Go Yi-ra drags her off and buys her a bunch of drinks, trying to figure out what she likes. Then, he straight up asks if she is Hye Sung's girlfriend. Da Woon quickly denies it, and Go Yi-ra begs her to convince Hye Sung to join the volleyball team. Da Woon remembers that Hye Sung told her he doesn't like volleyball, so she was hesitant. But since her crush is asking for a favor, she comes up with a plan to organize a match where they can defeat a team, and that might reignite his interest in volleyball. Go Yi-ra loves the idea and tells his team to start practicing hard because their next match is against Soo Bin's high school team. He even convinces the cheerleading team to help them out. On match day, Go Yi-ra tells Da Woon that it's her responsibility to get Hye Sung to watch the game. She agrees, but has no idea how to get him there. She tries to trick him into watching the match, but Hye Sung immediately sees through her and says, "That gorilla must have sent you." Caught red-handed, Da Woon apologizes. But Hye Sung, who is starting to like Da Woon, agrees to watch the game after school anyway. When they arrive at the court, Soo Bin, seeing Hye Sung, yells out that it's cheating if Hye Sung plays for Go Yi-ra's team. Hye Sung assures her he's only there to watch, and Soo Bin threatens her team, saying that if they don't play their best, she will kill them. Meanwhile, Go Yi-ra pumps up his team, telling them that this is their last chance, and if they lose, they will never get Hye Sung on their side. Da Woon was super excited for this match, and soon the game began. But as always, Go Yi-ra's team was playing horribly. After the interval, the cheerleaders came out to perform, and Da Woon was so focused on staring at them that Hye Sung tried talking to her, but she didn't even respond. After the break, Go Yi-ra's team continued their awful performance, and they lost. This made Go Yi-ra scream out in frustration. Post-match, Da Woon was still watching the cheerleaders leave, and when Hye Sung asked her why, she explained that she now had a chance to get closer to her senior by joining the cheerleading team. Hye Sung, however, suggested, "Why don't you just tell him how you feel?" To this, Da Woon replied that she couldn't do that just yet, and first, she needed to impress him. Hye Sung reassured her that whatever she decides to do, he would always support her. Da Woon was happy to hear that. Meanwhile, on the court, a guy made a snide comment. "I can't believe they lost to a high school team when they were university students." Embarrassed, Go Yi-ra collapsed to the ground in shame and began to cry. Later, back at the coach's house, Soo Bin teased Go Yi-ra, reminding him how he had boasted that his team would defeat them. This comment really pissed off Go Yi-ra, and Soo Bin didn't help matters by showing him a recording of the time when he begged her to let them play a match against the high school team. At that time, Soo Bin had refused, and Go Yi-ra mocked her team, calling them scaredy cats. Watching this video sent Go Yi-ra's anger through the roof, and the two of them started fighting. When their coach arrived, Go Yi-ra switched to acting mode and started crying, accusing Soo Bin of teasing his team. Go Yi-ra's friend was impressed by his acting skills and joked that their captain could make it in the movies. The coach, however, remained calm, saying that winning and losing are part of the game. He asked Soo Bin what was going on, but before she could say anything, Go Yi-ra threatened her, warning that if she spoke to the coach, he would make her entire team disappear. His friend even supported this ridiculous threat, so Soo Bin kept quiet. The next day, Da Woon arrived at college and smiled as she watched the cheerleading auditions. Hye Sung, on the other hand, was utterly confused. Even after class, Da Woon was ignoring Hye Sung and his attempts to talk, which led to Hye Sung being swarmed by his fans. Annoyed, he walked away. Meanwhile, Da Woon sneaked into an empty classroom to practice her cheerleading routine, unaware that Hye Sung was watching and laughing at her. Startled at first, Da Woon quickly resumed her dance, but it was so hilariously awkward that Hye Sung couldn't stop laughing. Exhausted, Da Woon sat down, thinking she would never be selected with her current skills. Hye Sung encouraged her, saying she should never give up. Da Woon was touched by how kind and sensible Hye Sung was, but she quickly refocused on Go Yi-ra, her first love. The following day, Da Woon was hiding on the court watching his senior when a guy appeared, scaring Da Woon, who ran away. The guy, confused, wondered why she was smiling so much at the captain. Later, Hye Sung and Da Woon were walking together when Hye Sung asked her what she would do if she started dating that gorilla. Da Woon, remembering what her mom used to say, replied that her first date would be a lunch date because it's the best way to gauge a guy's manners. Hye Sung then went to Go Yi-ra and told him they needed to talk, leaving Go Yi-ra shocked and agreeing to the conversation. Back at home, Da Woon was practicing hard, but she ended up injuring her feet. The next day, she arrived at university looking absolutely stunning. No, wait, it wasn't Da Woon. It was Suji, disguised as Da Woon, who was here to audition for the cheerleading team. When Go Yi-ra saw Da Woon, he remarked that he didn't know she could look this beautiful, and all his friends agreed. Suji thought to herself, of all the people in this university, why did Da Woon have to fall for this gorilla? She said nothing to Go Yi-ra but gave Hye Sung a big hug, shocking everyone, especially Hye Sung. Suji aced her audition and got selected, but when she came out, Hye Sung scolded her for sending someone else to cheat in the audition. Suji couldn't bring herself to admit that this whole idea was hers and that Da Woon had no clue about it. Furious, Hye Sung left, even snapping at his fans on the way out. The fans, of course, started trash-talking Da Woon and were about to confront her and try to beat her, and she dogged, and later Go Yi-ra offered Suji a ride home, and despite her refusals, he insisted she get in the car. While buckling her seatbelt, Suji grumbled that she didn't need it, she just wanted to get home. Meanwhile, Hye Sung went to Da Woon's house, and upon seeing her injured feet, accused her of being just like any other girl, deceitful, just like the rest. He said she couldn't even think straight when it came to that gorilla. Da Woon was utterly confused by his outburst. Just then, Go Yi-ra arrived with Suji, and upon seeing them together, Hye Sung lost it and stormed off. Yi-ra, observing them both, exclaimed in shock, "Wait, you two are twins!" Suji explained everything to Da Woon and apologized, saying she only wanted to help. Both were upset about Hye Sung's misunderstanding. At the same time, Hye Sung was in a dilemma. He had already told Go Yi-ra about Da Woon's feelings and even suggested that Go Yi-ra take her out on a lunch date. Reluctantly, Hye Sung agreed to watch the after-school volleyball practice, but he was only doing it for Da Woon's happiness. He felt terrible for being so angry at her and couldn't bear the thought of seeing her with someone else. He didn't know what to do. The next day, Da Woon told the cheerleading team the whole truth and asked for another chance. The team wasn't too kind, but then Go Yi-ra stepped in and told everyone that it wasn't Da Woon's fault and that she deserved another shot. While most were hesitant, one of Go Yi-ra's friends agreed. Outside, that same friend teased Go Yi-ra, asking if Da Woon was his girlfriend, to which Go Yi-ra immediately denied by saying she was not his girlfriend. He was just helping her out as a senior. Later, Da Woon asked Go Yi-ra to go for lunch to fulfill their deal. But during lunch, Da Woon realized that the whole lunch date idea had originally been her suggestion to Hye Sung, and now, here was Hye Sung, doing everything for her happiness. She ran to find him but arrived just as class started. Quietly, she sat next to Hye Sung, but he stood up and went to sit with his fangirls who were annoying him. After class, Da Woon told Hye Sung that she had explained everything to the cheerleading team and would move forward on her own merit. She also asked Hye Sung to meet her after school. Meanwhile, Hye Sung's fans were fussing over her. After school, Hye Sung went to watch the match but didn't say a word. This annoyed the players, who wondered why he even showed up. Go Yi-ra also yelled at him, reminding Hye Sung that he had fulfilled his part of the deal, and now Hye Sung had to fulfill his. Angrily, Hye Sung shouted that he didn't want anything to do with a loser team that lost to a high school team. This infuriated everyone, especially Go Yi-ra, who grabbed Hye Sung by the collar, and the rest of the students stepped in to break them up. After the scuffle with Go Yi-ra, Hye Sung is in a foul mood, but that changes the moment he sees Da Woon practicing her dance moves. His spirits instantly lift. He had actually come to the cafeteria to meet the coach, who was trying to convince him to rejoin the team. But Hye Sung's attention was completely on Da Woon. He even greets her and keeps stealing glances at her, much to the coach's annoyance. The coach, fed up, tells Hye Sung to just go sit with the girl already. Embarrassed but obedient, Hye Sung sits next to Da Woon and asks about her injury. She says she is fine, and the coach joins them at the table, probably feeling a bit like a third wheel. On their way out, the coach slyly asks Hye Sung if he likes Da Woon. Cue the blushing. Once the coach leaves, Hye Sung heads to the library, but his fangirls latch onto him again like glue. He tells them to go to the library, but they start making excuses, only to realize later that maybe they should have actually studied because they don't have library cards. Meanwhile, Won and Jin Ha are talking to Hye Sung, saying they know their team isn't playing well and that they don't have anyone to coach them. Apparently, Captain just wanted Hye Sung on the team, but after their fight, that's looking impossible now. After a pep talk from Go Yi-ra's friends who are suspiciously loyal, Hye Sung ends up at a restaurant where, surprise, surprise, Go Yi-ra is already drunk. Go Yi-ra's best friend is livid, but the rest of the group accepts Hye Sung with open arms. In his drunken state, Go Yi-ra spills the beans, revealing that it wasn't Da Woon's idea to audition for the cheerleading squad, but Suji's. Hye Sung feels awful for yelling at Da Woon for no reason. The next morning, Go Yi-ra's best friend wakes him up, reminding him they have a match against Hye Sung. Still hungover, Go Yi-ra is confused, asking who challenged Hye Sung. Everyone points at him saying, "Dude, you did that when you were drunk." Facepalming, Go Yi-ra sulks, but the match starts, and right off, Hye Sung strikes out one of Go Yi-ra's teammates with the first ball, leaving everyone stunned. Meanwhile, during the cheerleading auditions, Da Woon reveals that she initially joined the squad to impress someone, but now she wants to prove she can achieve something on her own merit. She gets selected and runs off to share the news with Hye Sung, but can't find him. Instead, her teacher invites her to the freshers' party that night, where Da Woon learns Hye Sung is at the volleyball court. She rushes over to find him, and seeing him so happy, she can't help but just stare, and for the first time he only sees Hye Sung. At the party, both Hye Sung and Da Woon are late. The teacher cheekily tells them to do a love shot, and Hye Sung, being the gentleman that he is, drinks Da Woon's share as well. Naturally, everyone starts teasing them, calling them a couple. After the party, Hye Sung is walking off with his earphones in when Da Woon tries to stop him, but he doesn't hear her. Just as a cyclist is about to collide with Da Woon, Hye Sung swoops in like a hero, saves her, and even puts his earphones in her ears to block out the angry cyclist's words. They sit together in the park, where Hye Sung apologizes for everything, saying he now knows the truth. Da Woon thanks him for the lunch date and admits that back in school, all she did was study and people made fun of her for it. Even Suji had only tried to help, but now she doesn't need anyone's help. Hye Sung, hearing this, wonders if Da Woon doesn't want to be around him anymore. Da Woon, on the other hand, starts reminiscing about all the moments she spent with Hye Sung and realizes that he gave her the confidence she needed. She is no longer in love with Go Yi-ra, but with Hye Sung. When he looks at her, she gets flustered and runs away, leaving Hye Sung sad once again. After losing to Hye Sung, Go Yi-ra is sulking at home when So-bin deliberately steps on his feet, telling him to leave. The two bicker like siblings, and the coach even tells Go Yi-ra to stay put. The next day, Hye Sung reminds Go Yi-ra of their bet, saying that since he lost, he has to call Hye Sung Sr. Go Yi-ra scratches his head, not remembering a thing, and curses himself for getting drunk. But of course, he gets drunk again and becomes all clingy with Hye Sung. This time though, Hye Sung doesn't seem to mind his company. Just then, Da Woon arrives there and calls Hye Sung outside. She tells him they have been called for a university photo shoot the next day, and even gives him her number. Hye Sung asks her to stay with him for a bit longer, and Da Woon apologizes for getting him involved with the volleyball team, but Hye Sung reassures her, saying he is doing this for the university because he is now part of it. The next day, Da Woon arrives at college looking like a doll, leaving Go Yi-ra speechless. Hye Sung arrives and takes her away, and for the first time, Go Yi-ra feels jealous. During the photo shoot, Da Woon feels uncomfortable at first, but with Hye Sung's help, they manage to get through it. Go Yi-ra, burning with jealousy, approaches Hye Sung and asks if Da Woon is his girlfriend because he wants to know once and for all. Hye Sung denies it, and Go Yi-ra smirks, saying, "Good, because from now on, she is mine." He then boldly asks Da Woon out on a date, asking her to be his girlfriend, and takes her away, leaving Hye Sung feeling anything but happy. After leaving from there, Go Yi-ra takes Da Woon to lunch. And there he eats like it's his last meal on earth, stuffing himself like he has never seen food before. Da Woon watches in horror as his eating habits are far from impressive. Once they leave, Go Yi-ra tells Da Woon that he will only call her at night because he is too busy during the day, and with that, he walks off. Da Woon, however, isn't too thrilled with the way things are going, and soon after, she starts feeling unwell in class. She is on the verge of fainting when Hye Sung swoops in just in time to catch her. He even asks his fangirls to grab her purse and phone while he plays the hero. In the hospital, when Da Woon wakes up, she panics, wondering who changed her clothes. The nurse almost too casually tells her that her boyfriend did it, adding how lucky she is. Da Woon is left dumbstruck, completely bewildered by the situation. Once she is better, Hye Sung takes her home, and on the way, Da Woon asks about her phone. Hye Sung reassures her that it's safe with his fans, so there is no need to worry. When they reach home, Da Woon thanks him, but Hye Sung, with his cool, mysterious vibe, tells her that if he does something for her, she doesn't need to say thanks because he doesn't like it. He even places his hand on her head, declaring that she is special. Da Woon, completely confused by this, feels like she is in some sort of drama scene. Later, Da Woon calls her sister, trying to make sense of everything. She wants to study alone in her room but can't focus after all the drama. When she tells Suji about what happened, Suji is not impressed at all. She is annoyed, saying that Da Woon is dating that gorilla when she has someone like handsome Hye Sung in front of her. Da Woon, embarrassed, says that she is not good enough for Hye Sung and can't even think about dating him. Suji is not having it, telling her that love doesn't work like that, and she should just tell Hye Sung how she feels before it's too late. That night, when Go Yi-ra calls Da Woon, his call is answered by one of Hye Sung's fangirls, who gleefully adds extra spice to the story about what happened between Da Woon and Hye Sung. The next day, Go Yi-ra confronts Hye Sung, declaring that Da Woon is his girlfriend, and if anything happens, Hye Sung should call him first. Hye Sung is caught off guard, not knowing how to respond, when Da Woon walks into the scene. Go Yi-ra grabs her hand and walks off with her, leaving Hye Sung feeling incredibly uneasy. Go Yi-ra then asks Da Woon if she was so uncomfortable with him that she passed out. Da Woon was a bit hesitant, saying that it was just the change in seasons making her feel unwell. Go Yi-ra is overjoyed, proudly claiming that he knew all along she was happy with him. Back in class, Da Woon tries to act normal, but Hye Sung isn't fooled. After school, the coach tells the players to prepare for an upcoming competition, while Go Yi-ra won't stop praising Hye Sung's car. But Hye Sung is more interested in Da Woon's well-being, asking Go Yi-ra if she is truly happy. Go Yi-ra, slightly annoyed, asks why Hye Sung cares so much about his girlfriend and if he has feelings for her too. But he laughed at his own words by saying that Hye Sung only dates famous girls. But Go Yi-ra is confident, declaring that Da Woon is special to him, and since he was her first crush, he will never let her go. Hearing this, Hye Sung feels even worse. Meanwhile, Da Woon, confused by the situation with the two boys, can't focus during dance practice, and ends up getting scolded by her coach. That evening, Go Yi-ra gives her a couple's ring, and although Da Woon doesn't want to wear it, she reluctantly does. Go Yi-ra is thrilled, convinced that Da Woon is now officially his girlfriend, but Da Woon is far from happy. After dropping her home, Go Yi-ra attempts to kiss her, but she dodges. He tells her he will wait for her, clearly oblivious to her discomfort. Later, Go Yi-ra spots his best friend out on a date with Soo-bin and teases him about dating such a crazy girl. Their usual playful banter ensues, and they all go out for dinner. During the meal, Go Yi-ra proudly shows off his couple ring, and Soo-bin sarcastically comments that he is dating Hye Sung's girlfriend. Go Yi-ra, enraged, snaps at her, but Soo-bin tells him that if he cares about himself, he should break up with Da Woon before his heart gets broken. Meanwhile, Hye Sung's fans are busy bad-mouthing Da Woon and plotting to stir up more trouble between the trio by calling them here. Hye Sung, having dinner with his father, gets lectured about rejoining volleyball, and at the same time one of the fangirls calls him. But before they can escalate their mischief, their teacher catches them using fake IDs and chases them off because they are not actually the students. Soon after, Go Yi-ra arrives, and Da Woon immediately starts asking about Hye Sung, worried because those fangirls told her he was beaten up. Go Yi-ra, irritated, starts getting angry because all Da Woon seems to care about is Hye Sung. Hye Sung shows up at the scene, and Go Yi-ra immediately asks why he is there, but of course, Hye Sung doesn't bother answering and just starts walking away. Now, Go Yi-ra, all fired up, slams his hand against a board in frustration, making Da Woon shriek in surprise. Hye Sung stopped his car and they both rushed him to the hospital. At the hospital, Hye Sung asks the doctor if Go Yi-ra's hand is okay, since, he is a volleyball player and that hand is pretty crucial. Hearing this, Go Yi-ra starts thinking, maybe Hye Sung isn't as bad as I thought. The doctor confirms the hand is fine, but seeing Da Woon care so much about Go Yi-ra definitely doesn't sit well with Hye Sung, so he leaves in a huff. Meanwhile, at home, Da Woon is so confused that she just flops onto her bed. Her mom notices and asks what's up, and Da Woon spills the beans. Her mom? Overjoyed, practically dancing with excitement, because for the longest time she thought Da Woon would never end up like her older sister, and she is not able to attract boys, maybe never even getting married. But now, she has got 2 guys fighting for her. The next day, Go Yi-ra's hand injury means Hye Sung gets promoted to team captain. In class, the teacher warns everyone about some fake student, and Da Woon is listening to all this when she notices Go Yi-ra staring at her lovingly. She asks why he is here, and he nonchalantly says that since Hye Sung's now captain, he finally has time to spend with her. Da Woon, clearly not in the mood, brushes him off with a quick excuse about needing to go to the library. At lunch, Go Yi-ra is struggling to eat because of the bandage on his hand. Tired of it, he just takes it off, leaving everyone around surprised. Just then, Hye Sung shows up and moves Go Yi-ra's bandage aside as well, making everyone realize these two are in cahoots. Go Yi-ra, still curious, asks Hye Sung why he showed up at the restaurant the other night. Hye Sung, in a fit of anger, throws his phone and tells Go Yi-ra to see for himself. The message revealed that Go Yi-ra had forced Da Woon to drink and then left her alone. Go Yi-ra is stunned and silent. Later, Go Yi-ra tries to figure out if Hye Sung actually likes Da Woon. He asks a friend to send a text from Hye Sung's phone saying that Hye Sung loves Da Woon, but Da Woon sees through the prank right away. Go Yi-ra, though, laughs hysterically because she knows Hye Sung so well, while their friends wonder if he has fallen head over heels for her. On the way home, Go Yi-ra is almost hit by the same car that he saved Da Woon on their first day. Ready to scream at the driver, he realizes it's Hye Sung and thanks him instead, saying he only met Da Woon because of him. Naturally, Hye Sung doesn't feel great about this at all. That night, Go Yi-ra shows up at Da Woon's house, but her mom tells him she is out. So he waits by the gate, and when Da Woon arrives, he immediately kisses her. Except wait for it, he kisses Suji by mistake when he sees that Da Woon is standing near him, and he starts apologizing to both of them. Da Woon says nothing. The next day, Go Yi-ra, feeling all sorts of guilt, starts running around the court screaming in frustration, leaving his friends wondering if he has lost his mind. Hye Sung is just as puzzled. Later, Go Yi-ra works up the courage to apologize to Da Woon, who forgives him, pointing out that everyone makes mistakes. She notices his hand isn't bandaged and calls him out. He confesses he faked the injury just to spend time with her. Da Woon forgives him, but Go Yi-ra can't help but ask why she is not jealous like other girls. Da Woon simply replies, "Misunderstandings happen with twins, no big deal." Go Yi-ra invites her to a movie and Da Woon agrees, but inwardly, her mind is still on Hye Sung. After the movie, Go Yi-ra is over the moon, but Da Woon is more stressed than ever because her mom bombards her with questions. The next day, Go Yi-ra can't stop shouting for joy, making his friends remark again how their boss is lovesick. At college, Da Woon sees Hye Sung surrounded by girls, and she genuinely feels she is not good enough for him anyways. She starts walking away, ignoring Go Yi-ra calling her. He stops her, asking if she is still mad, but Da Woon denies it. Later that night, Go Yi-ra is having dinner with his friends and they are discussing Da Woon. Soo Bin says that if she ever caught her boyfriend kissing another girl, she would first beat up the girl and then go after the boyfriend. Her boyfriend looks genuinely scared. Go Yi-ra calls Da Woon to plan their next date. While she chats happily on the phone, the moment she hangs up, sadness washes over her. Hye Sung, watching from a distance, realizes she is only going along with all this for Go Yi-ra's sake, not her own. The next day, Hye Sung is called to the administrative office, where he is told that his admission has been canceled because his father didn't approve. Despite his pleas, they refuse to listen. Hye Sung, defeated, picks up his papers and heads out. On the way, he bumps into his teacher, who gives him pictures from a photo shoot he did with Da Woon. Looking at them, he starts thinking about Da Woon when he accidentally drops his admission papers. The teacher, seeing them, is shocked. Meanwhile, Hye Sung confronts his coach, venting that he has done everything his father wanted, but now that he is trying to finish his studies, they are holding him back. The coach, pretending to be sympathetic, agrees, though secretly he has already met with Hye Sung's father. Da Won also gets her hands on Hye Sung's papers and calls him non-stop, worried. When she finally spots him, she hugs him tightly and confesses her feelings, saying she really likes him and won't stay at the university without him. Hye Sung is completely shocked, and so is Go Yi-ra, who sees everything. He confronts Hye Sung, telling him to stay away from his girlfriend. Da Won says it's not Hye Sung's fault because she was the one who hugged him, and he forcibly drags Da Won away. Later in the car, she admits to Go Yi-ra that she likes Hye Sung. Go Yi-ra, surprised, asks when she realized this. Da Won explains that it hit her when she found out Hye Sung was leaving college. Now this shocks Go Yi-ra too. But wait, Hye Sung is really leaving college? Meanwhile, Hye Sung's father tries to reason with him, but Hye Sung, in a rare fit of anger, bursts out, "I have always done what you have wanted, but for once I want to do something for myself. Why can't you let me?" His dad, seeing him like this for the first time, goes quiet. When Go Yi-ra drops Da Won off at home, her mom invites him for dinner. As Go Yi-ra digs in like a hungry little squirrel, her mom asks why he likes Da Won. He replies, "Because she's beautiful like a doll." Her mom then adds, "Well, Da Won's twin sister Suji looks like a butterfly too, so if you ever confuse them, don't blame me." This comment reminds Da Won of a kiss with Suji, and he quickly shuts his mouth while Da Won shushes her mom. Later, while rummaging through Da Won's things, Go Yi-ra starts comparing everything to Suji and doesn't even know which thing belongs to her, which makes Da Won uncomfortable. As they leave, Go Yi-ra admits he is not feeling great about this, but he now knows that Do Won only likes Hye Sung, and he broke off with her. Hearing this, Da Won feels a bit sad for her senior. Yi-ra goes straight to Hye Sung and says he is going to try to move on from Da Won. Hye Sung gets a little happy, but then Yi-ra calls him a horrible person for stealing his girlfriend. Hye Sung, chuckling, says they are still friends and he will always make up with Yi-ra, but Yi-ra just rolls his eyes. Hye Sung arrives at Da Won's house and tells her he is not leaving college, which makes her really happy. Da Won's mom, a huge fan of Hye Sung, also invites him for dinner. When she asks why he likes Da Won, he admits he doesn't have a specific reason as he just feels free with her, unlike anyone he has ever met. This makes Da Won's mom convinced that Hye Sung is the perfect guy for her daughter. In Da Won's room, Hye Sung recognizes all her things, gives her a hug and says he knows she likes him too, so he won't let her go again. Just then, he gets a text from Go Yi-ra warning him that if they are seen together until the competition, he will make Hye Sung pay. Hye Sung just laughs it off. As the competition begins, everyone works hard and Da Won gives her best at cheerleading, but they still end up losing. During lunch, a player accuses Hye Sung of intentionally letting them lose. One responds that he is the one who played the best on the team, and that's why they scored it all. The others hurl insults at him, and Hye Sung calmly says, if they have such a problem, he will just leave the team. Go Yi-ra quickly jumps in to say Hye Sung isn't going anywhere, while the coach storms off after berating the team. Afterward, the players apologize to Hye Sung, but he tells them if they want forgiveness, they should ask for it themselves, as they weren't playing to their full potential. The cheerleading team's captain observes the chaos and comments that their arguments are more entertaining than their actual game. Go Yi-ra steps up to fight, but his friends stop him and he even yells at Da Won for getting involved with the cheerleading team. The next day, Da Won and Hye Sung go on a date. Da Won encourages him that they will win the next match, and Hye Sung just smiles. Suddenly, everyone starts taking pictures of Hye Sung and he pulls Da Won away to avoid the chaos. However, Won and Jin Ha catch sight of them and suspect Da Won is cheating on them with a gorilla. What a twist. To escape the fans, they put on caps and sunglasses to enjoy their date, but one of their teammates spots them and also thinks Da Won is cheating on their captain. Meanwhile, Go Yi-ra's best friend watches him working and tells him that now he is acting just like a captain. He invites him to dinner, and though he agrees, he is still feeling the breakup blues. After their date, Hye Sung kisses Da Won, and she happily shares her first kiss with him. Unfortunately, Yi-ra's best friend witnesses this and jumps to the conclusion that Da Won is cheating on her captain, leading him to whisk him away to prevent Yi-ra from seeing it. Meanwhile, our lovebirds are completely lost in each other. The next day, everyone was practicing for the match, and Go Yi-ra told his best friend, "Are you blind or something? You can't even play properly?" Naturally, his friend shot back, calling Go Yi-ra blind. Meanwhile, the rest of the group decided they wouldn't talk to Go Yi-ra about Da Won before the competition, as they figured that might distract him from the match. After lunch, Go Yi-ra apologized to Da Won for shouting at her the day before, and she graciously forgave him. However, Go Yi-ra's best friend couldn't help but comment on how clever the girl was, spinning tales to their captain. During practice, Go Yi-ra made the juniors play in senior positions because they were doing well. But this upset the seniors, and they started fighting, and when the coach arrived, he said there was no need for any changes, which left both the captain and Hye Sung feeling down. Now that March had arrived, everyone was off to watch the matches, including their teacher. Da Woon was there cheering for her team. But in the first half, Go Yi-ra's team lost, prompting the coach to gather all the players and say, "See why I told you to stick with Yi-ra's plan?" For the second half, they put the juniors in, and for the first time, they actually won. No one could believe it, and both boys were ecstatic. After the match, Soo-bin barged into the changing room, causing everyone to scatter like ants. But she was unfazed. She just walked over to her boyfriend and gave him a hot pack, completely ignoring everyone else. Her boyfriend followed her in, and while reaching for her, a scissor fell from the first aid box and someone picked them up. Then they spotted Hye Sung and Da Woon nearby. Soo-bin charged at Da Woon, furious because she thought she was cheating on Go Yi-ra with him. Hye Sung caught her wrist just in time, but then a fan, wielding those very same scissors, rushed toward Da Woon. Hye Sung quickly put his hand out and the scissors landed right in his palm, causing a nasty cut. At the hospital, everyone gathered around as the doctor informed them that Hye Sung had a serious injury. If he didn't get surgery, he would never be able to play volleyball again. His mother was devastated, and Da Woon felt that it was all her fault. But Go Yi-ra stepped in, reassuring her that she wasn't to blame. Hye Sung's parents came in, urging him to get the surgery, but Hye Sung shot back that they only cared about his volleyball. His father, overwhelmed, knelt before the doctor, begging him to convince Hye Sung. Otherwise, his hand would be useless, and Da Woon sees all of this. Da Woon rushed and took Hye Sung to see his father in order to know that he cares about his son. Hye Sung's father was missing from there, and while searching for him, they both saw him on the stairs lamenting that he was the reason his son hated him. That sight broke Hye Sung's heart. He asked Da Woon if he was doing the right thing. Da Woon explained that although his father was strict, it was all for his own good. After some soul-searching, Hye Sung finally agreed to the surgery, which delighted his father. Hye Sung said he only wanted to play volleyball, and that brought joy to his parents, making Da Woon smile too. Hye Sung mentioned that he would need to stay in the hospital for 2 months due to the surgery. Da Woon assured him she would wait for him in college, and just like that, 2 months flew by with Da Woon missing him terribly. Go Yi-ra then asked for his couple ring back, and Da Woon replied that it was with Suji. He urged her to go fetch it. A while later, Da Woon told Go Yi-ra to meet Hye Sung. He grumbled about why he should, but Da Woon insisted she couldn't go there to see him because if she goes, she can't come back since she missed him a lot. But Gorilla tells her that he is not going to do charity. But begrudgingly, he visited Hye Sung in the hospital. Upon seeing him, Hye Sung thanked him for visiting, but Go Yi-ra exclaimed, "No way!" But they ended up sitting down for a chat. Go Yi-ra told Hye Sung that Da Woon blamed herself for his injury, and that he should really talk to her. Hye Sung promised he would come back to college soon. During practice with the senior, Da Woon's was not paying attention, so her senior asked about the problem. She took a moment to realize how much she missed him, and how all this had happened because of her. Hye Sung overheard, and after telling the senior to leave, sat next to Da Woon. She was initially taken aback, but then hugged him and they shared a beautiful kiss. The university competition began, and this match was crucial for Go Yi-ra's captaincy. However, they lost the first half, and during lunch, everyone began reminiscing about Hye Sung, wondering how things would have been different if he were there. The coach sent them out for a pep talk, and just then, they spotted Hye Sung waiting for them outside. Their spirits lifted and they rushed toward him, feeling emboldened. Hye Sung cheered them, and in the court, his eyes were solely fixed on his beloved Da Woon. Gorilla and Hye Sung's team wins the match, and they are over the moon. On their way back to college, Gorilla decides to annoy Da Woon by sitting between them, leading to everyone on the team asking if he is trying to steal their joy. Go Yi-ra tells him to hush up. The next day, when Hye Sung and Da Woon go on a date, Go Yi-ra hops into Hye Sung's car, dramatically claiming his car broke down and asking if his best buddy can't help him out. Both Hye Sung and Da Woon are frustrated because Go Yi-ra is becoming a persistent distraction. During their dinner date, Go Yi-ra shows up again, munching like a hungry hippo, but this time, The lovebirds choose to ignore him, which only makes Gorilla more agitated. After dropping Da Woon home, Gorilla drags Hye Sung to a party where Hye Sung eats like a true champ, leaving their friends wondering where this glutton came from. The next day, as Hye Sung and Da Woon are heading out for another date, a reporter starts questioning them and snapping pictures. Hye Sung confronts the reporter, who then asks if he is dating that girl, prompting Da Woon to dash in and claim she is just Hye Sung's friend. Hye Sung boldly claims Da Woon is his girlfriend, leaving her utterly stunned. When the reporter asks for a photo, they strike a pose together. Outside, a swarm of reporters approaches Hye Sung, inquiring if he is dating a college student. To escape, he quickly covers Da Woon with his jacket and hops into a taxi. Even the driver recognizes them. Hye Sung insists that Da Woon is his girlfriend, and she is left in shock while Hye Sung is just blushing away. Back at home, Da Woon's mom starts worrying about her daughter's makeup for the reporters, leaving Da Woon speechless. The next day, reporters bombard Hye Sung with questions about his girlfriend again, but he deflects, stating he is focused on his upcoming semi-final match, which silences them. At school, Da Woon's teacher asks if she knows who Hye Sung is dating, just as he arrives and takes her hand, whisking her away. Their teacher is amazed to discover that Da Woon is indeed Hye Sung's girlfriend. The semi-final match is upon them, and it's against Soo Bin's team, where she confidently claims victory for her side, only for her boyfriend to call her a traitor. As the match kicks off, Gorilla's team looks promising, with Soo Bin cheering for her boyfriend. But as the game heats up, her team members start getting anxious, and she quiets down. In the end, Gorilla's team clinches the victory, making everyone cheer, including Soo Bin, who has got eyes glued to her boyfriend. Meanwhile, Gorilla keeps snatching Da Woon's water bottles and snacks from Hye Sung, clearly unable to handle their cuteness. Even though he tries to squeeze between them again, Hye Sung tosses him aside, but Gorilla just doesn't get it. After the match, Hye Sung and Da Woon sit together, and she makes him promise to fulfill one wish if he wins. He agrees, and the final match day arrives with Soo Bin coming to cheer for her boyfriend, which delights him since she is openly supporting their team. As the match begins, the judges warn that Go Yi-ra's team will face a tough challenge against the three-time university champions. The game starts, and Da Woon cheers enthusiastically as Hye Sung's team plays impressively, ultimately winning, shocking, and delighting everyone. Go Yi-ra's team lifts their coach in celebration, shedding tears of joy since it's their first big win. The judges declare that Hye Sung has proven he is a lucky charm for any team he joins, and another judge points out that it's not just Hye Sung but also their captain, Gorilla, who played well. His name gets mentioned loud and clear. Everyone is enjoying the aftermatch party, but Hye Sung and Da Woon are already off on their ride. Meanwhile, a drunk Gorilla jumps into their car, insisting he is coming along. Hye Sung, however, kicks him out, declaring no one will interrupt his time with his girlfriend. Gorilla was fuming because he doesn't have any money to go to the party. At the party, Go Yi-ra's best friend notices Suji and questions what she is doing there. Of course, he mistakes her as Da Woon. Suji, with her charm, told him that she really looks like Da Woon, to which Heb said Soo Bin that after Hye Sung, she is hitting on him too. Soo Bin gives him a spank on his head that he is just drunk. Gorilla, in a huff, arrives at the party and declares that from now on, Suji is his girlfriend because she was not giving me the ring he has given to Da Woon, which leaves her speechless. Suji's senior teasingly tells her to quit acting like Miss World, prompting Suji to call her auntie, leading to a heated argument that nobody can seem to stop. Meanwhile, Hye Sung asks Da Woon about her wish, and she reveals she wants to spend the whole day with him at the beach. He is ecstatic, and she gives him a peck on the cheek as they head off to enjoy their time. Just then, Gorilla shows up with Suji, claiming they are a couple, and that Suji proposed to him. Suji chimes in, saying it's funny how both of them decided to drag their boyfriends to the beach on the same day, but Hye Sung interrupts, asking if Gorilla is going to be late for his interview. Go Yi-ra, panicking, insists he has plenty of time, only for Da Woon to remind him it's in the morning. He dashes off in a hurry. Once Suji realizes that he has been tricked, she storms off, calling them cheaters. Meanwhile, Hye Sung and Da Woon happily continue enjoying their day, wrapping up our drama with a cheerful ending.